Throughout human history, the concept of justice has been shaped in countless ways. Severe punishments, exiles, and public executions were common forms of punishment in ancient civilizations. But how did we arrive at prisons, these structures where millions of people are confined today? How did they come to be? In this video, you'll find out. But first, please subscribe to the channel. It's free, and your subscription helps the channel continue producing videos. The origin of prisons is a complex historical issue, and their evolution is long, varying from culture to culture. They emerged as a response to the need for social control and punishment, but the way they evolved reflects changes in societies and justice systems over time. Before the creation of prisons as we know them, punishments were typically more physical and immediate, such as executions, mutilations, banishment, or slavery. The idea of incarceration, keeping someone confined in a restricted location for long periods as a form of punishment, was uncommon in early civilizations. Ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians and Mesopotamians, had some structures used as prisons, but incarceration was not the most common form of punishment. Instead, physical punishments or death sentences were frequent. In the Greek city-states, prison was rarely used as a punishment by itself. Exile, fines, or corporal punishment were more common. In Rome, prisons like the famous Tullianum were used more as temporary detention places until the condemned were executed or enslaved. Prisons in these periods were primarily used to hold people until their trial or final sentence was carried out. In medieval Europe, prisons were still not widely used for long-term punishment. Physical punishments, executions, and exile were the most common forms of justice. However, detention in dungeons or castles was used to hold nobles and prisoners of war, often for political purposes. During the Renaissance and early modern period, the concept of prison began to evolve into a regular punishment system. In the 16th century in England, prisons began to be used more frequently for debtors, who were held until they paid their debts, leading to the creation of debtors' prisons. A notable example was the Fleet Prison in London. During the 17th century, with the Protestant Reformation, some ideas about rehabilitation and repentance began to develop. Prison started to be seen as a place where the condemned could reflect on their mistakes and reform, rather than just be punished. The concept of penitentiaries emerged in the second half of the 18th century, especially with the construction of the Walnut Street Jail in Philadelphia, USA, in 1773, one of the first prisons to adopt solitary confinement to encourage moral reflection and rehabilitation. During the 19th century, prison became the primary form of punishment in many Western countries, replacing older practices like public corporal punishment. Three main prison models emerged: the Philadelphia system, Pennsylvania system introduced in the United States in the early 19th century. This system of solitary confinement aimed to promote repentance and rehabilitation. Prisoners were kept isolated all the time, working in their cells, and human contact was minimized to avoid negative influences. Auburn system, New York system. In contrast to the total confinement of the Pennsylvania system, the Auburn system allowed prisoners to work together during the day, but they were required to remain silent. This model became popular for its economic efficiency, as the prisoners' labor could generate revenue. Global expansion. These models influenced the creation of prison systems in other countries, such as England, where prison became the main form of punishment during the 19th century. Pentonville Prison, built in 1842, was an influential example of an English penitentiary based on solitary confinement. In the 20th century, the focus of prison systems began to split between punishment, rehabilitation, and public safety. After World War II, movements emerged to humanize the prison system. Human rights organizations began to push for better conditions and fairer treatment of prisoners. Reforms focused on rehabilitation, education, and vocational training inside prisons started to expand, particularly in Western democracies. At the end of the 20th century, a new model of maximum security prisons, or supermax, emerged. In these facilities, prisoners deemed extremely dangerous or of high importance, such as gang leaders or terrorists, are kept in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. A well-known example is ADX Florence in the USA. Today, modern prison complexes vary greatly, from low-security detention centers to supermax facilities. Many countries use private prisons, run by for-profit companies, as part of their penal systems. The debate over the role of prisons continues. Should they focus on punishment, rehabilitation, or public safety? Prison reform movements advocate for alternatives to mass incarceration, such as alternative sentencing and rehabilitation programs outside of prisons. And what about you? Do you know anyone who is or has been in prison? Do you think the prison system works? Let us know your opinion in the comments. Give a like if you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.
Racing to the beat, can't stop moving my feet. Now ball spins.